player will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. We are coming at you with another showcase today with Team Power Creep, I guess. I don't know what you'd even call this, but this is a team that gets used pretty prevalently across the top end of the game. It is a very well-rounded team, all things considered. You can really get beat by any one of these three individually, depending upon really just who ends up shining within the battle. But we're going to talk through this team concept because this actually is one of the more interesting ones to talk about, where you might be looking here and the vision cards probably don't make sense at first glance to a lot of you, and there's some reason for some of that, but we'll talk high level individually about how some of this comes together. Let's talk about the elephant in the room first, the Evade Sephiroth. Now, I have, since day one, been very skeptical of this Evade Sephiroth because, although technically if you look at the evasion chart, he does look like a pseudo-evade unit, all the new units have gotten far more accurate as of late. So sure, pseudo-evade in the sense that old units are probably going to miss a lot more frequently, but theoretically versus these new units, it should probably be far less. And a lot of that is driven by this new Tifa Vision card for the Greatsword team that gives them a staggering amount of luck, which adds to their potential accuracy rate. But for Sephiroth, there's a little bit more if you peel the onion back, where there's a couple things that line up really well. And number one is the Sorrow Vision card. This is a limited vision card from Dragon Quest, and all of you may not have this, but this is a very good card, not only from the luck, but it gives Sephiroth some extra bulk with the HP percent. He gets the added luck here, just raw stats. You also get the extra defense, piercing, and 5 evasion as a fire bestowed effect. So there's a lot going on here that he really likes. And then this Dark Ifrit card really is, Esper really isn't all that bad, because I'm going to move to the screen for a second just to better highlight this. Dark Ifrit has water resistance nodes. So not only does Dark Ifrit has the 15% water resistance, but he innately has 10% ice resistance. And obviously versus the Mono Greatsword team, that water res and the ice res really clutch. And then for Sephiroth in particular, you do get the advantage of the fire attack up nodes. You still get the evasion rate. I like having the reaction block rate personally. I have a little bit of the crit hit rate, but this is a great Esper for him that not only adds to that pseudo-evade idea, but just from a straight elemental resistance point really has some good upsides, and that includes the Winter Coat, where obviously this is meant for pure evasion, but you're getting a free light res up of 10%, where you may not be able to normally fit that on your Trust Stones right now, given the meta, and it is technically 3% more than what that Trust Stone passive is, but the all-element debuff res of 50%, what this means is that if you try to get imperiled by all-element res down, or really any element res down, it's a 50% chance it just flat doesn't work. And so Jeume and both Sephiroth have all element res down on their limit breaks, that this coat, in addition to the evade, in addition to the light res, gives a 50% chance that neither of those will go into effect whatsoever. So really interesting setup here with Sephiroth. The rest of this team, yeah, I'm not using any AoE resistance cards here. And honestly, that's part of the power creep currently, where there is more AoE res penetration than normal. There's more AoE crush in perils and whatnot. And that's not to say that you should drop AoE res in all of your builds. It's still very good to put in your builds. But this team in particular, you can kind of get by without it. I am using a lot of Greatsword oriented vision cards otherwise, where Jeume and Cloud are getting the agility and luck up here in the primary slot. Sephiroth's technically getting the agility from this card, so they're all at least fast as possible per se. This is the Ram's Vision card, which is, you know, the universal agility of 9% in the sub slot. I have Secrets of the Heart here, which, you know, maybe don't need, obviously it does do about 15 to 20% evasion, but also accuracy for this entire team. So I have it here really just to try to maximize the evasion and the hit rates, because Cloud, although he does have a very strong guaranteed hit, Cloud isn't the strongest innately from an accuracy perspective. And so I'm technically using Luck Trust Stones here on Cloud. I'm doing the same thing on Sephiroth. I don't think I'm doing it on Jeume. I'm doing it on Jeume. Okay. I'm actually going to flip this around real quick, guys. I'm going to replace some of these with the Fire Res and Curse Res Trust Stones. Yes, you should be equipping Curse Resistance at this point. I think I'm pretty comfortable keeping the rest of these. I'm okay with that. And so although Jeume, you know, probably not going to be evading whatsoever, the extra accuracy certainly does help, because this is a very common Sephiroth build that we're seeing. And then to cap things off is just the generic Ifrit sub-vision card for the 30% attack to the party. We'll talk about initial placements real quickly, and then we'll let the dice roll and see what happens today. And so I am using a Keen Blade Cloud, and so I have this team set up currently with this spacing so that Cloud is technically in the middle of the two of them, that he's getting the unit affinity of both of them, whereas Sephiroth and Jeume are only getting the unit affinity of Cloud. And that's really important from an agility perspective because Cloud is actually a lot slower than both of them. And so when you space them in such a way here that Cloud gets the unit affinity of both units, whereas they only get one, he actually gains some ground in the total agility here. So Cloud's coming in at 126. He's technically not my fastest. That would be Jeume, who's coming in here at 130. And then Sephiroth technically should be just slightly below Cloud at the 124. And so the concept here is that Jeume will move first. She will buff Cloud and Sephiroth together with her teammate buff. Cloud will then move to Sephiroth, who is the slot 1 unit, and use his teammate buff on him. Sephiroth will then use his teammate buff on both Cloud and Jeume, who will be adjacent at that time. We'll then go through the next set of rotation where Jeume will use her self buff. Cloud should hopefully then, if the enemy's not in range, use his Keen Blade on whoever is around, and then Sephiroth at that point should use a secondary buff, which could be a TMR here. I think I have it. I can check the toggle, but whatever. That's the general idea. We're going to roll with it, see if it works. Oh, and we got a Q here. Hasafir, rank 181. I swear to God, I know this name. They might have actually been on a showcase a couple days ago, if I recall. But thinking Kadaj and Sephiroth and King Mont here. This is a very interesting team to go up against here. Rank 188. I'm curious to see if they did the initial placements. Hopefully they did. But regardless, my Jeume buffing my 2 units as we were talking about just a minute ago. Cloud is the second fastest in this match, which, little surprising, Kadaj and Seph on the enemy team should likely be close, and he does have the initial placement. So his Kadaj is going to move backward here to buff both of them. I actually like this. That way Kadaj can start his second round of buffs here. Sephiroth is going to use his now AoE res up, which again is part of why you can ditch that vision card and still kind of get away with it because your party's still getting AoE res to some degree. It's not exactly the same, but this team is so offensively potent, it doesn't really matter. And so Mont's going to get his teammate buff off here. Sephiroth is looking like he'll probably be frontlining a bit. Soulbreaker coming in here. That's very interesting. The Man-Eater down the attack down. I think that's Kadaj's own TMR, if I recall off the top of my head. We've had a couple like that lately, so I get him confused, but oh my God. Cloud, unfortunately, does not have the jump capability that Jeume and Sephiroth do, so he cannot actually get in range to Keen Blade either of them. You know what? Not the end of the world. It at least gives Cloud the Keen Blade, but I'm going to probably have to look into that. That's not as intended. So the enemy Seph is now going to curse on us. I do have Curse Touchstones on. You can see he missed my Sephiroth, so that evasion angle coming in very handy. King Mont also missing him here. Again, it's the kind of thing that these new units are very capable. There we go. Kadaj has the extra hit rate on his attacks. These new units are very capable of hitting, any kinds of pseudo evasion. But the meta is such a way right now that not everyone's putting the accuracy that they should. And so this is one of those times you can kind of abuse that and take advantage of it. And so now we're getting the Jeume limit break in here. It's going to all element res. It's going to dispel all the AoE wide guard that probably has already been dispelled between Cloud and Sephiroth to some degree, but I get the re-raise, or no, Kadaj never had the re-raise. I got to re-examine that, but getting Sephiroth down here now, Sephiroth will get his re-raise. He will get to act here, so the enemy Seph likely going to regen all of his health, I would think, but doesn't do a ton of damage. I fortunately proc back some of the heal back, and he did not use the damage absorbability there, so he is definitely in one-shot territory here now. The enemy King Mont will get the haste online. We'll at least get the follow-up attacks here. I'm expecting some decent damage. It's only on the Jeume. Actually, not that bad of damage. So, okay, all right. So maybe offensively, he didn't invest a ton there. But I at least get Sephiroth down here now. Now it's just a matter of time. 3v1. Even Mont with the follow-up at the haste. This is a very big uphill battle. The haste removal there coming out because of the dispel. If it wasn't going to be her, it was going to be any one of them because they can dispel haste on hit because of the Sephiroth buff that he gives to both of them. Telepheric Fury coming in here. It looked like there might have still been a barrier active based on the animation, but not really sure. And Cloud with Focus Thrust. Whew. Boy, that chain damage you cannot underrate. Any kind of chain resistance you can get right now, very critical to these slash-heavy teams. The elemental chain res, obviously not so much, where this is a rainbow element team. But for slash chains in particular, as they start to accumulate here, yeah, you're talking like 30 to or 20 to 40% damage reduction. It depends, so I can't give a hard estimate, but it's material. Let's leave it at that. And so we'll commence matchmaking again. Let's see what we get for round 2 here. Oh, we got a match here versus Astil, who I've seen in arena quite frequently. They were one of the arena members when I was competing, and I won number one. So very interesting to see what they come up with free match. This is a mono katana team, and initial placements, this checks the boxes. This is going to be a very fun fight to watch. I will say I've not seen the results that I like to see with Oberon the Auspicious because he does not have any courage or re-raise. Although he's got a really good heal back, I do find him to frequently get two tapped in this meta when you see a Jeume Celestial on the opposite side. But all three of his units are faster than mine. That is honestly kind of irregular to see in the broad scheme of like what can possibly be faster. That's going to be very interesting here to see if I can even get some of these second buffs off, or whether or not he already is in range, which I think might be the case. And so he's going to use Revitalize on Kadaj, which honestly, an interesting choice. I personally would probably have that turned off for either his second normal buff or really any other TMR. I don't think Kadaj needs the Revitalize. Sephiroth, though, is going to be already in range here for the curse. Now, I will say I'm fortunate here that it looks like just my Seph is likely the one caught in this, so not the end of the world, and it misses anyway. All right, this is coming out nicely. Now, at least my Sephiroth, though, the reflex, should be in range to curse that whole enemy team on this next turn. Cloud's going to Keen Blade himself and move forward, which, you know what, I'm still okay with overall. Really not ideal, but you can see in the turn order, Cloud's about to go again right after Kadaj does. Oh, a really, really clutch reflex again. Quite honestly, even my team has holes from a reaction block rate perspective. I don't really think any of my vision cards have any kind of substantial amount of reaction block rate, but land a very clutch curse on Oberon the Auspicious there, who cannot get the heal back off. My Sephiroth should still have hate, I think, because they missed him. So because he did not take that hit yet, he should still technically have the 2 hate. Now, this is rather big to remove the card because I don't think we've courage sealed Kadaj yet. So he removes the re-raise at the very least on the Sephiroth. Cloud can maybe come in here and be a superhero. Great Slash does 2-shot the Oberon because he had the curse applied. Enemy Seph, though, here, anything is possible. I think I'm lined up that he might be able to get a diamond. He can with Blazing Slash. That's a ton of damage. I'm so lucky my Sephiroth's hanging on by a thread there because he had his re-raiser move. So I do believe I get the re-raiser move on that Sephiroth because of the ability to Telepheric Fury coming in to finish breaking up that physical barrier. This is going to be an enormous slash chain that's accumulated. This is Cloud's low AP ability that apparently has enough killing power that's what they're going to use here. So damage caps the Seph. My Jeume really fortunately is going to have a chance to go here, but we'll probably use a Pierce, Harvester. When your enemies are one hit in the damage calculation, your AI will still opt to use the lowest AP ability if possible. So that's why I chose Harvester rather than a Pierce type attack, which probably does more damage, but with more AP. So that was a really interesting fight, to be honest. That's the kind of team that really could go a lot of different directions. There's a lot of different dispel on the enemy teams. There's a lot of synergy with the katana cards. I think I was just the benefit of spacing there, where his Sephiroth missed me on the limit break, only got me rather than including Jeume in that as well. And obviously, I just got the really fortunate curse counterplay there on Oberon the Auspicious, who maybe that's the difference in the middle of the fight there, where my Sephiroth hung on by a thread. If Oberon gets his turn, that may not happen there. So I will queue again. That was a really good fight, though. Big shout out to Astil for queuing. Thank you so much for that. We got a match here versus Kachung, rank 188 with a Sephiroth slot 1. This should be very interesting to see what they come out with, because obviously he can slot into many different teams, this being one of them. The Sephiroth, King Mont, and Jeume team. It looks like my team is faster with all 3 units, though. Obviously, critically important to see that in this map, to see if you get enough space to do the buff rotation that you want. That bodes well in my favor, that I should be able to get a second round of buffs here and maybe bait him early. So that could obviously be the case. Sephiroth's going to move straight ahead here. It does look like they are virtually opposite me here. Now, their Jeume does move first and technically moves away from me. This is a good opening rotation to start. King Mont moves next, and Sephiroth is the slot 1 unit, so King Mont will move to him to buff next, and then Sephiroth, and this is nearly identical to my rotation in terms of overall turn order. I would be intrigued to see if his Mont has a Keen Blade like my Cloud does, and if he could run it with better success than mine, who will use it on himself at this moment. If he does not, which honestly is fine, because this second buff for Ashen King Mont is absolutely a must-have. The AP restore, the courage, the defense pen for the damage output, everything there he really needs. Sephiroth is in range, goes for the Sundered Sky, misses the enemy Sephiroth, so it does look like they might also be running that evade orientation Sephiroth. Jeume does still get her second buff off here, though. The height difference, unfortunately, I don't think she's able to hit. But here comes the enemy, Sundered Sky again, so no limit break coming out from either of them yet. And he also misses me, a very clutch reflex here. The limit break, unfortunately, going to really do nothing other than give Cloud the damage percent up, I believe. And that's a big loss there to not break the barrier of Sephiroth, where his enemy Sephiroth still has that barrier intact. Can my Jeume hit him? This is one of those things where this is where that Secrets of the Heart luck vision card of the subslot should hopefully come in handy. She finally at least is able to hit. But here comes the limit break. This is going to be absolutely massive if it does land on the enemy Sephiroth, because that curse will hopefully prevent the re-raise, and it does. So that enemy Seph will not have the opportunity to come back up. And Mont does not proc that heal back, so that limit break working to absolute perfection in the timing of that there. Now Mont coming out with his own limit break here. Hopefully this haste does not last for long, because I can dispel haste upon hit from Sephiroth's first buff in there. The follow-up damage, pretty decent damage versus the Jeume. I at least proc my heal back. The courage is still intact. I get a very clutch reflex here, so it looks like we're pretty much even on the reflexes. My Cloud is still alive, still has courage active. This looks very good for me at the moment. Cross Slash coming out here to kill enemy Mont. This is excellent. Obviously going to my favorite now. Jeume's going to come out here. Whirling Bloom will remove all buffs to enemy Jeume. My Sephiroth, I'm not expecting a ton of damage here, but the chain of the slash chains might certainly surprise. They didn't like what they were seeing, so they decided to leave a little bit ahead of time. But obviously, that is still a very competitive team. It's one of those things that really comes down to the timing of that curse limit break and the spacing of the enemies, what lands and what doesn't. It's one of those reasons why these mirror matchups, they can be frustrating, because it's such minor details that can be the absolute difference between a top meta team looking like a top meta team or folding rather easily sometimes. And that never feels good either. So always good to try to analyze what might be going wrong. We're going to go for one more here, hoping for something off the wall, kind of wacky for a fun showcase to end things. But shoot, I'll take anything at this point. Looks like we might have a match here. CBR Promise. I don't recognize this player, but rank 188, Cloud slot 1. You like to see it. I do wonder if this is Mono Greatsword. Oh, not a team iteration I ever would have really thought of. This is dual Greatsword with a Bartz, which, I'm not going to count out here. Now, I do think it's probably not as synergistic as possible. But Bartz with the follow-up attack certainly is still a threat. And A2 certainly can still seal barriers. So for their Bartz, who does have a barrier, that will help him a little bit in that regard. I'm not counting this out yet. A2 obviously has some difficulty versus the Sephiroths, where he does a fair amount to disrupt what she likes to do. But having an enemy Cloud on his side too certainly is not something to shy away from. Cloud can carry these fights on his own too. And so now I'm curious to see, does not use her self buff, uses the Revitalize buff instead, which I think is a little bit of a miscue there. And even the Cloud here using the magic barrier as that second buff rather than a TMR option here. Again, just given the current meta, that second buff on Cloud doesn't have a ton of value. It's honestly a good buff. It's literally just not the right time in what you expect for matchups. But here I come toward the middle. I would imagine this is a limit break on both of them. The Bartz is a little too far forward for my liking, to be honest. I would have preferred Bartz to be slightly further back, that bow tie version of him, because you see now he just gets absolutely nuked here. Doesn't get the chance to even get his follow-up attack online. I don't think. I never saw that. So Bartz goes out, or doesn't go out yet, I guess. So maybe speaking early, but 1 HP here. It looks like my Jeume is going to be able to act before he can. Not a ton of damage coming out from the A2, but there is the follow-up attack. So apparently it did get off. It did remove the shell, which, doesn't do anything for their team, but certainly some nice utility still in there. Fair amount of damage coming out from Cloud. The follow-up attack here, does not bring Seph to re-raise yet. That's still good in my favor that I have that online. Here comes Jeume with the Limit Break. This is going to be a pretty devastating amount of damage, I would think, for the all-element apparel. The AoE wide removal. We knew Bartz was going down, but A2 and Cloud are still in 2-hit territory, where you have Courage and Re-Raise active 3-hit territory for A2 now. I do get a very clutch Berserk off from the Sephiroth because that's the sub-job ability of his. It's not on his main job. That I like this ability. I'm running my Sephiroth at 97 Faith for exactly that upside to potentially Berserk an enemy. Obviously not looking good for the enemy Cloud at the moment. Great Slash coming out, takes out both of them, but the Re-Raise is still active on the A2. Probably not going to be able to capitalize on it here, though, but Jeume's going to come in and then give her a high five and put her to bed. But, that team, I'll be honest, I think underachieved a little bit. I don't like how Bartz was so far forward there, but, could be a lot worse. But I think I'm going to call the showcase there, though, because I think we saw exactly what we were going to see no matter what the matchup. I think every single fight we saw was basically working as intended. You saw some deficiencies in this team where I really don't have any reaction block rate of note in any of the vision card support, where typically for a lot of these greatsword teams, there is a fair amount of reaction block rate from the vision cards. I have some here for Cloud via the cell phone at least. That gives him reaction block 40. I do have it on my trust stones of reaction block 20, but there's a lot of reflexes going on here. Certainly I'd like to cut down on those, but this is actually still just a good showcase, even from the Sephiroth angle of the evade perspective, that is hypothetically possible, and just kind of taking advantage of people that aren't really gearing for it. But I'll pause there for now today. Thank you again so much for watching, everybody. I'll talk to y'all later.